Om Satgurubhyo Namaha. Namaskaram to one and all. I am Aishwarya Harish, the Cultural Coordinator for Natyaalayam, the Academy of Performing Arts, Mumbai. We are very happy to have all of you gathered here to participate in the Young Researchers Forum hosted by Natyaalayam, Mumbai and Center for Excellence, Art and Culture, Shasun Jain College, Chennai. We are very happy that so far this forum has covered a wide variety of topics from literature, spirituality, rituals, music, puppetry, dance, and today we are here to know more about architecture and dance. As an ongoing online initiative with the objective to provide a worthy platform for young researchers, we urge all those who are interested to present their work to kindly send us a mail on tyrforum@gmail.com. We begin our 15th session on an auspicious note with a prayer song rendered by Kumari Sundari.
வேதத்தினுள்ளே வினாவும் விடையுமாய் விற்றிருப்பவனே விநாயகா. வேதத்தினுள்ளே வினாவும் விடையுமாய் விற்றிருப்பவனே விநாயகா. நாதத்தினுள்ளே ஓங்காரமாய் நின்று நாதத்தினுள்ளே ஓங்காரமாய் நின்று நன்மையெல்லாம் அருளும் விக்னேஸ்வரா சரணம். நாதத்தினுள்ளே ஓங்காரமாய் நின்று நன்மையெல்லாம் அருளும் விக்னேஸ்வரா சரணம். வேதத்தினுள்ளே வினாவும் விடையுமாய் விற்றிருப்பவனே விநாயகா. பூதநாதனின் புதல்வனாய் தோன்றி வாதாபியை வதைத்து வான்புகழ் கொண்டு மாதா பிதாவே உலகென காட்டி மாதா பிதாவே உலகென காட்டி நல்மாந்தருக்கும் அதுவே நீயது என அறிவூட்டிய மாதா பிதாவே உலகென காட்டி நல்மாந்தருக்கும் அதுவே நீயது என அறிவூட்டிய மோதக பிரியனே மூஷிக வாகனா. மோதக பிரியனே மூஷிக வாகனா. முத்தமிழ் வித்தகா சித்தி விநாயகா. எத்தருணமும் உனை நினைந்து நான் செயல்பட எத்தருணம் என கருகுறீரையோனே. வேதத்தினுள்ளே வினாவும் விடையுமாய் விற்றிருப்பவனே விநாயகா. வேதத்தினுள்ளே வினாவும் விடையுமாய் விற்றிருப்பவனே விநாயகா. Thank you.
Thank you, Sundari, for that very melodious rendering. I would now invite Dr. Jayashree Rajagopalan, Director, Natyaalayam, the Academy of Performing Arts, to welcome our speakers and the audience.
Om Satgurubhyo Namaha. Namaste. A very warm welcome to all of you who have joined the 15th session of the Young Researchers Forum, initiated by our institution, Natyaalayam, the Academy of Performing Arts, Mumbai, and the Center of Excellence, Art and Culture, Shankarlal Sundarbai Shasun Jain College for Women, Chennai. We've been blessed to have had our revered Guru, Padma Bhushan, Dr. Padma Subramaniam, to flag off the series with a very brilliant inaugural speech stressing the importance and need for research in Indic studies, to reiterate the relevance of ancient knowledge and strengthen our common Indian psyche. My Guru has been a constant source of inspiration, guidance, and support to us for every session. My humble namaskarams to my dear Guru Paduka. Today's young researcher is Miss Lekha Prasad, a brilliant Bharatanatyam dancer and a student of architecture who has found common principles of application between the two, which she will present today through her paper titled Natyaalayam, Naatyam to Architecture. Welcome, dear Lekha. We are very fortunate to have with us the expert in Vastu Shastra, an architect and a geobiologist, and a performing artist with a very strong foundation in Bharatanatyam. Dr. R. Jagannathan, the principal of KS School of Architecture, Bangalore. A very hearty welcome to you, Dr. Jagannathan. We are so happy to have you here. I'm sure it's going to be a very interesting and engaging session. Thank you for both of you who have joined here and to all the other viewers who have joined us in the 15th session of the Young Researchers Forum.
Thank you, Dr. Jayashree. I now request Dr. Rajshri, Director, Center for Excellence Art and Culture, Shasun Jain College, to kindly introduce our speakers for today.
Hey Gurubhyo Namaha. My pranams to our Paramaguru, Padma Bhushan Dr. Padma Subramaniam, whose blessings have brought our Young Researchers Forum this far, that is the 15th session. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our expert for today, Dr. R. Jagannathan. It is often said by our Guru that the space occupied by the artist is the sacred space. And it is amazing the kind of work that Dr. R. Jagannathan has done in this sacred space and brought it to the understanding of even lay people. A few words about him. He is currently the principal of the KS School of Architecture, Bengaluru, disciple of Padma Bhushan Dr. Padma Subramaniam. He is the architect for the Bharatanatyam Foundation for Asian Culture, Pattipulam, a must-see tourist place for all art-loving people. In academics, he has a B.Arch from MIT, Manipal, a master's in Town and Country Planning, Anna University, Chennai, a postgraduate diploma in Construction Management from NICMAR, Pune, and a PhD from the Department of Sanskrit, University of Madras. He has presented papers in national and international conferences. He has lectured in academic platforms, including the Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts, New Delhi. His research on Vastu Vidya, offering consultancy for a large number of individuals, institutions, and industries, has brought that research into its practical field, applications which create harmonies of space and people. It gives us immense pleasure to have you here with us today, Dr. Jagannathan, and we are looking forward to your expert comments. We have the young researcher, Ms. Lekha Prasad, a Bharatanatyam dancer over 18 years. She is the disciple of Guru Kalaimamani Srimati Priya Murli and Guru Professor Sudharani Raghupati, Padma Shri awardee. In academics, she is a B.Arch from the National Institute of Technology, Tiruchirappalli, an M.Arch from the School of Architecture and Planning, Anna University, Chennai, and she is pursuing her MFA in Bharatanatyam from the Anandamaya University, Chidambaram. Her research is on Naatyam to architecture, unique design process connecting Bharatanatyam and architecture. Her awards and achievements are as follows. She is a Nritya Nipuna for the Nalanda Nrityutsava in 2021. She was awarded the Meenakshi Sundaram Pillai Endowment Award from Krishna Gana Sabha in 2017. He is a B-graded artist from Doordarshan and the recipient of the Bharat Kalachar Scholarship. Some of the notable performances at various prestigious sabhas include the Spirit of Youth, the Madras Music Academy, Pongal Festival and Ilamayil Thiramai, Krishnagana Sabha, Anusham Arts Festival in RR Sabha, Karthik Fine Arts, Parsadi Swami Sabha and others. She has performed in various group productions such as Aranganin Padayil, Meendum Bharatiyar and Thirumayile Kuravanji. We're very happy to have you, Ms. Lekha Prasad, in our midst. Welcome you to this 15th session and you can proceed with your presentation. Thank you so much.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaskaram. My pranams to my Guru, Srimati Priya Murli, and my Mahaguru, Professor Sudharani Raghupati. My namaskarams to the expert today, Dr. R. Jagannathan. I would also like to extend my gratitude and my namaskarams to Dr. Jayashree Rajgopalan and Dr. Raj Srivasudevan and the Young Researchers Forum for giving me this wonderful opportunity to present my little research connecting Bharatanatyam and architecture. Being a dancer and an architect, it was always an urge for me to connect these two art forms as I felt there was so much reflecting from one into the other. We have a slokam where we say, Dharmyam Yashasyam Ayushyam Hitam Buddhi Vivardhanam Lokopadesha Jananam Natyam Etad Bhavishyati Natadjnanam Natadshilpam Nasa Vidya Nasa Kala Nasav Yogo Natad Karma Natyasmin Yana Drishyati. So Natyam has everything. There is the allied art forms are all within Natyam. There is nothing which is not in Natyam. So there is architecture as well in it. So my idea was to bring out architecture which is completely derived from Bharatanatyam. In the Natya Shastra, we have how the architecture of the playhouse or the Natya Mandapa has to be designed. It has been given in such detail from the kind of measurements, from the kind of shape, the size, everything is mentioned in the Natya Shastra. But what was very striking about it is all of the shapes of the performance spaces were all geometrical shapes, like the rectangular, square, or the triangle. In contemporary architecture, a lot of times what we see is there is a lot of flowy patterns when we see in terms of parametric architecture. That is, when we say parametric architecture, that's what we visualize it to be. But my idea was to bring in these geometrical shapes through parametric architecture, completely abstracted from Bharatanatyam, to build my building. A concept which is there in architecture is that of shape grammar. So what is shape grammar? The idea is to bring in shape grammar rules, that is shape rules that brings out geometrical shapes to certain variables to bring out a design idea, where we use shape rules to generate geometrical shapes in multiple design outputs. So my idea here was to bring in a traditional concept into a contemporary design process. So there comes my research, Natyaalayam, a performing arts center using parametric architecture from abstracted movements of Bharatanatyam. This project aims at abstracting movements of Bharatanatyam, converting it into a pattern, like our Lego block patterns, and from this pattern, I derived my architectural building. This building, the Performing Arts Center, aims at giving a holistic experience or rasanubhava. Before I went on into my study, I looked into what are the possible ways in which dance and architecture are linked. I also looked at what were the spaces within a performing arts center and also the different design approaches used to abstract dance movements. At this point, I would like to say that most of the research papers that I went through spoke about abstracting Western classical art forms, where this kind of process has not been much explored within the Indian dance forms. So how does this design process work? It's a simple 6-stage process. We start off with choosing the item in Bharatanatyam that we want to abstract. The second process is abstracting the movements. Third is deriving the parameters from these movements. Codifying these parameters into simple alphabets or numbers for easy handling. On this, we apply our rule system, which finally generates multiple iterations of patterns. When we take a traditional art form like Bharatanatyam, there are so many different interpretations how each one would have on how they want to abstract the dance movement. I had come across this research paper which said dance and architecture are linked in a way where they are movement in space over time. So dance and architecture are majorly linked through these three aspects: movement, space, and time. So abstracting Bharatanatyam on these lines, we see that the movement, the hand movements and the leg movements in Bharatanatyam can mainly be categorized as linear movements. Even if they're circular movements, they all can be broken down into linear movements within. And even the leg movements fall under this category. Next, coming to space. When we see these movements in three-dimensional space, they can be very broadly classified based on three stances, which is the standing or the Samapadam, the second being the half sitting or the Aramandi, the third being the full sitting or the Murumandi position, which all differ in height. The third aspect, time. Every step and every beat in Bharatanatyam is set to a particular time cycle, or talam as we call it. This has complex calculations involved, but to simplify it, the talam has three aspects. The talam, the structure, jati, the number of finger counts within the talam, and gati, the number of beats within each finger count. So to simplify this calculation for better understanding, I've taken the example of the Chatursha Jati Ekatalam, where it's a 4-beat structure, and within every beat, we have 4 aksharams. So in the first beat, we have 4, in the second, it becomes 8, and in the third beat, it becomes 16. Usually when movements are choreographed over this, in the first beat, we have 2 movements. In the second, it becomes 4, and in the third, it becomes 8. Now that we have abstracted movement, space, and time, it's about deriving the parameters from here. From movement, we have the hand movements and the leg movements. From space, we have height variation. And from time, we have speed variation. Assigning each of these parameters with a specific number, alphabet, or Roman numeral, we get a coding done for these parameters. Now moving on to the 5th step, which is the rule system. But before we apply the rule system, it is important for us to fix the size of the geometrical shapes that we need. The grid is a very important aspect in architecture, while at the same time, the talam is a very important aspect in Bharatanatyam. Connecting the two, I form a grid which is derived from the talam calculations, where I take the Ekatalam again as the example. The Chatursha Jati Ekatalam has 4 beats. So I divided it into a 4x4 grid, where you see the dark blue square that is divided into 4x4 grid. Within each, when we have to look at the movements in the first beat, there are 2 movements. I take the size of every square to be 80 meters cross 80 meters, where this number differs based on the person's choice. I chose 80. So when I divided it by 2, I got 40 cross 40. And similarly, for the second speed and the third speed, we get 20 and 10. These become the sizes for my rule system. So I have my parameters, I have my code, and I've defined what my rule system is. So how does this rule work? So for every code, there is a particular geometrical shape which is assigned. So the speed variation here determines the size of the block. Say if it's the first speed, it's a 40 cross 40 square. The leg movement determines the direction in which the block is going to be placed. The hand movement determines the size of the block, the shape of the block, and the height variation determines the height of every block. Now this is the design process, and now let's see how this is applied on the Alaripu. For building my Natyaalayam, I chose an Alaripu as an apt idea for it to be, as that's like the flowering of a flower, like a blossoming of a flower. So that would be the apt item to choose for a site plan of a performing arts center. The Alaripu we know is a pure Nritya-based item where movements start with the eyes, move on to the neck, the hands, and then the whole limbs, where there is absolute harmony in the movements in the whole body. So here I'm choosing the Chatushra Alaripu again. Coming to the second step of abstraction now. Here are the movements of the Chatushra Alaripu. Here I'm abstracting the parameters as step 3. Here in this slide, we see the hand movements and the height variation being abstracted. Here we have the leg movements and the speed variation, where at every step, we're saying what exactly is the leg position here, what exactly is the speed variation. So from here, we're codifying the entire Chatushra Alaripu. Using the same grid pattern as it is the Chatushra Talam, we're forming the rules. Now we have the entire code for the Alaripu, and we have the rules for the rule system as well for the pattern generation. So let's see how the pattern is formed. Taking the first code, which is 1_2a, which means it is the first speed with no leg movement. It is the second hand movement, which is a horizontal hand movement for a height of 9 meters. So we have the first shape. The next code is this. Here we have a leg movement which says that the block has to be placed in front. So the next block comes right in front of the previous block. Similarly, for every code, there is a particular block. So this is placed in progression to form a complete pattern generation iteration, which is derived from the Alaripu. This is just one such iteration. We can have multiple iterations generated from this code of the Alaripu. Now that I have my pattern, it's about converting it into architecture. I chose the first iteration for my design. Movement, space, and time has now been taken as the aspect of Nritya of Bharatanatyam to convert it into a pattern. But it's also important for us to look into the ideas of emotions, feelings, and experience, which is the important aspect of Abhinaya in Bharatanatyam. So that is going to be reflected in the design through the concept of Koshas. So what are these Koshas? Koshas has a very similar concept to that of the Alaripu, where it's compared to that of entering a temple. The Kosha is a concept of elevating the body to the mind to the spirit. There are totally 5 Koshas. The Annamaya, which corresponds to the body, Pranamaya Kosha, the vital force, Manomaya Kosha, the mind, Vignanamaya Kosha, wisdom, and Anandamaya Kosha, bliss. Connecting this concept with architecture, I am comparing the spaces that coincide with the concept of every kosha. Say, for example, the Annamaya Kosha is the outermost physical aspect, which is important for the survival, which is a survival kit of the body. So I take all of the spaces that are the services or the important aspects of the performing arts space come under the Annamaya Kosha. Similarly, if we take the Vignanamaya Kosha, is this place of learning. So all the educational spaces come into that kosha. So this way I'm grouping my spaces to each kosha. So how does a site formation happen? I take my pattern, and my pattern is zoned into the 5 koshas, with the Pranamaya Kosha being the central axis. My spaces are zoned into the koshas where every block is assigned to a particular space. Now on my site, which was chosen as a site in Chennai, Porur, I apply the Taalayam grid on the site. The axis of the Taalayam grid and the pattern both align. From here, I start to develop my site based on the architectural requirements, like we have parking requirements, circulation requirements, setbacks. Using all of those and climatology, I came up with the formation of my site plan. So from here, I bring out my site plan. At this point, I add another layer to this concept, is the psychology of colors. When I'm zoning the site into the different koshas, to make it more evident for a user who's walking through this site, for him to experience every kosha, I added the layer of psychology of colors, where every kosha is assigned to a color which is similar to that of the nature of the kosha. For example, if we take the Manomaya Kosha, it is assigned to the color blue, which is the color of the intellect. Similarly, Vignana Kosha has the color yellow, which is the color of confidence, creativity, and optimism, going with that of learning. So every kosha is assigned to a particular color. From here, I derive my site plan for my performing arts center. Now from pattern generation, I've got a very realistic site plan. But what about designing the spaces within the site, within each block in the site plan? That also has to be derived from Bharatanatyam. So how does that happen? That happens with a very similar rule system like before. We know that the adavas are like the building blocks in Bharatanatyam. Like ABC in English, when put together, form words and then form sentences. The adavas, when put in sequence, forms a jati or a korve. Here, I'm taking the adavas as the building blocks for my design, spatial planning within every block. So this happens with a very similar process. But since we already have a 3D block ready, it's about designing the 2D space within the 3D block. So I take the 2.5 cross 2.5 grid, apply the 2D parameters to the same rule system as before, and derive a pattern. This pattern is overlaid with concepts like rhythm, symmetry, mirroring, transposing, rotation to bring in the spatial planning modules. So these modules are later interpreted to bring out the spatial planning within the buildings. Now, when I say every block is assigned to a particular adava, we start off with the traditional namaskaram right at the entrance of the building, and the complexity of the adavas increase as we go within the site, ending with the tirmana adava right at the end. This shows the flow of adavas starting with the namaskaram and the tirmana adava at the end. So now let's see how this is reflected in the design. Starting with the Anandamaya Kosha, which is a survival kit. Just taking one example of a building from Anandamaya Kosha, for example, the lobby and the museum space. Here we have the traditional Namaskaram movements, which are here, under which I have codified these movements. And the pattern generation brings us with this pattern. I scale this pattern into 4 times and use the layout of this pattern as the basic planning layout for my museum and lobby space. At this point, I also add experiential aspects like skylights and semi-open spaces to add to the essence of the kosha. Moving on to the next kosha, the Manomaya Kosha. This is play of mind, where it uses completely all the senses of the body. Since this is the most publicly used space, since it has the exhibition, food court, retail spaces, this has a lot of outdoor spaces which are designed as well, where it caters to senses of taste, vision, sound, as well as speech. One such example here is that of the retail. Here I use the pakkadavu to derive the retail design. So here are the movements of the pakkadavu, and I end up with this pattern. This pattern I repeat it multiple times at an angle, and after which I mirror the pattern. This forms the basic module for my retail, where the yellow spaces are all the retail shops. So this module is rotated based on my site requirements to design my retail shop, like you see the pattern right here. This is the view of the retail space. Moving on to the Vignana Kosha, which is the complete learning space, we have aspects of transparency, a lot of pergolas, a lot of open spaces, courtyards, which encourages the idea for artists to interact for better knowledge development. We have the iconic tree here, where from childhood we have said that's the space of learning. So the yellow of Vignana Kosha is enhanced with the tree at the Vignana Kosha. Finally, being the Anandamaya Kosha is complete bliss. We say a performance is a culmination of everything in Bharatanatyam. So all the performance spaces come into the Anandamaya Kosha, and it is the color of white. It enhances the spirituality, and the magnitude of the building shows exactly how it is from the site, from the beginning, which we started off small, we end up with a highly monumental building right at the end. To understand this performing arts center better, I have a small video where we have on how is it to walk through this whole building. This being the entrance of the building, which also shows how the Alaripu starts, we enter into the Annamaya Kosha, which is the lobby space here. Right, what you see in front, we have the red path for the Pranamaya Kosha. What we see right here is the vision dome, the first thing we see in the Manomaya Kosha, which blocks us from the vision and chooses only a single path that we have to take. The Manomaya Kosha in the outdoor spaces screams blue, as blue is the color of the Manomaya Kosha. We have the food court, the retail, the exhibition, and the art gallery on this side. Moving to the other side, we have the activity spaces, library, and the workshop here. What we see, what we're moving into now is the Vignanamaya Kosha, or the learning space. We have the iconic tree, a lot of jalis, colonnades, and pergolas to enhance a lot of lighting within the learning space. The final place in the site is the Anandamaya Kosha, where the white color signifies its spirituality. It's placed at a higher level to increase the monumentality of the building, a flight of stairs that reaches that level of spirituality and bliss in our mind. And the glass facade right in the front of the performance space shows the transparency in it to achieve spirituality. From here, when we look at the site right in front, we see how is it to travel through every kosha to reach the final Anandamaya Kosha. So that is what my research is about. It is Natyaalayam describing completely derived from the Alaripu to bring in a performing arts center that you see. Thank you so much. Namaskaram.
Thank you, Lekha. I think it was a very interesting marriage, I would say, of tradition and technology. Over to Dr. Jagannathan for his expert inputs.
Namaskaram. Asmad Gurubhyo Namaha. I should at the outset congratulate our artist architect, Ms. Lekha Prasad, for the very interesting harmony that she has created in her project between the art and architecture for an artistic space. Very interesting work and very beautifully presented also. Congratulations, Ms. Lekha Prasad. Yes, it is a great subject of work when we say, and a great challenge in today's world, because our country, which has been India for the last few decades, is now becoming Bharat of several centuries old. In our new avatar as Bharat, we are discovering our roots, and not only discovering our roots, we are also exploring the strength of our visual and creative arts through our culture and heritage. And it is critical that in this new Bharat, our architecture, which reflects our new energies for posterity, also brings in this experience of our society. In fact, when Ms. Lekha was presenting uh, the integrating of culture and architecture, I was just recollecting a performance by Paduka for the inauguration of the South Zone Cultural Center at Tanjavur Brihadishwara Temple, where Paduka had so beautifully integrated art, architecture, and technology. Because in that presentation, Paduka started the Pushpanjali from the Kali idol at the entrance of the Brihadishwara temple. And from there, she was tracked by a spot highlighting lighting system, moved in almost a couple of meters, maybe more than about some 60, 70 meters, in the various Karana movements of her establishment, coming to the dais and then performing the entire performance, which still reminds me of her genius of integrating heritage, the Brihadishwara temple, with performing arts live, the Bharatanatyam of Paduka's performance, integrating with the current technology, using the features of lighting and illumination concepts to highlight her movement for the recognition of the audience. This is a very, very inspiring approach which Paduka had done. And I think these are all moments in history for the people of not only our country, from across the globe, where we try to learn how we can integrate the various technologies to the history of our great culture. So it is not just one more thesis book in the libraries of great universities of our country. Our culture is a living and performing art, which has not only to be read and appreciated, but also to be practiced and enhanced. When Ms. Lekha was speaking about parametric architecture, which is the kind of an in thing today in the world of architecture, young architects speak of parametric architecture. I was just trying to see, and I will quickly read out to you a small definition, which says parametric design is a paradigm in design where relationship between elements is used to manipulate and inform the design of complex geometrics and structures. Towards this, young architects today use different technology methods, softwares, where like rhinoceros and grasshoppers are used to develop design approaches and solutions to spatial concepts. Very interestingly, when I visited with my students, which we do this almost every year, take our students to Thiruvananthapuram and walk our students through the wonderful palaces in and around Thiruvananthapuram for our students to get an exposure of architecture of India. Because we see, for example, the palaces of our various states, the very famous palaces of Rajasthan, Jaipur, Jodhpur, our own Mysore and Bangalore palaces, our own great experiences, which are adopted into Indo-Saracenic style. Even our Rashtrapati Bhavan, which is built on the Indo-Saracenic style, which is based in heart on the European approach to life and thought, where the individual, the ruler who occupies this palace is a ruler who's too big, and that's what gets reflected in the architecture. So when you stand in front of, say, the Mysore Palace, or in front of the Jaipur Palace, or more recently today, in front of the Rashtrapati Bhavan, no, you are made to feel small. It is an aristocratic, undemocratic system, thought of mind, which came up with this kind of an architecture. Whereas, if you go to Thiruvananthapuram and look at the beautiful palaces at Thiruvananthapuram itself or in Padmanabhapuram, the amazing workmanship, which are based on the parametric design approach, which we are struggling with today with a lot of technology, which are architects and the craftsmen who together brought such wonderful concepts into living, and most importantly, the scale which they brought and made the king Padmanabhadasa. No, so you don't get to become small when you stand in front of the palace. The palace or the king does not dominate you, because the king himself has subjected himself to become the dasa of Sri Ananta Padmanabha, and therefore his attitude and values remain for the service of the dasas of Padmanabha, who are the citizens of the country. Probably that kind of a value system is what brought us the strength and values of our culture, which was represented through our architecture. Sometimes, I also strongly have discussions and debates in our own college amongst architects with the raging controversy about the Vista project, which our government has now initiated, where many architects are criticizing the project. But sometimes when you look at it from a point of view of Bharat, probably we will have to, maybe after digitally conserving the existing Lutyens Delhi, remove the existing Lutyens Delhi, make it into a Bharatiya Indraprastha, where we will have our values, and then the government will also become a Padmanabhadasa and bring values and kudos to our country. Architecture has that kind of a value and strength. So that is about what Ms. Lekha was talking about, parametric architecture, a design approach. Very interestingly, there is a core subject in architecture called as the theory of architecture. 2 or 3 elements which she had adopted and so strongly articulated into her design were: one, rhythm, which she spoke of and compared with the talas or the talamanas in performing arts, dance, and how she converted the thala into rhythm in architecture, and the space and form reflected the talas, and that into the adavas and the jetis formed a very beautiful harmonious, again a term in the theory of architecture which we as teachers struggle to teach our students. How I wish all students who come to study architecture should have studied a basic course in performing Indian art. It would be so much more relevant and useful for the students and the teachers so much more easier for them to translate the concepts and ideas, so that how Miss Lekha was able to understand and convert them into spatial solutions become more relevant. Congratulations, Miss Lekha, on your attempt. It was a great approach. No, and I'm sure we should, thank your teachers and also your parents for having you given the samskara. No, that you were able to absorb and grasp the art form and convert them into a living monument. So that was a very, very interesting approach, which I think, even which I always insist or encourage the students who come into our college. No, I usually ask, no, students, have you been learning music or dance or instrumental music, in your 8th standard, 9th standard? Typically in our country it happens, because the day the child comes to 10th standard, all stop, close, because now public exam, 12th standard, life challenge. No, it's as though like your child is on life support system, ICU, and no, close everything, get into academics, read, study, the rat race, and then it doesn't go well at the end of the day. Whereas, no, I think we must continue with our life, and which the new education policy is kind of addressing and try to work off for us. I think it's a wonderful approach. I'm sure examples like our own expert today, Ms. Lekha Prasad, have shown where art and academics and a challenging course like architecture can be still pursued while you still continue to be a performing artist. It's not simple. Architecture is an extremely tough program. And finally, I would like to appreciate her understanding and interpretation of the koshas, the pancha koshas, which she has kind of analyzed and brought into the concept of her design process. Very, very interestingly done. Of course, a little bit of understanding which I have done in my research is trying to understand how, while you use the koshas as an interpretation element into the different physical aspects of him, it can also be used into the core of architecture, which is proportions. Today, with technology, we have been able to measure, actually physically measure, the vibratory frequency of each kosha of an individual. Very, very beautifully, as our tradition says, our most auspicious elements, they say, one of the auspicious elements is the salagrama. And typically, not always necessarily, typically, a salagrama is in the form of an oval. There's a lot of difference. An architect will know there's a difference between an ellipse and an oval. Because we always get confused. It looks similar, but then the oval is quite different from the ellipse. It looks like an oval. And one of the probable reasons our ancients, one of them, selected this to be an auspicious form is because it resembles the human body. The koshas which envelop the human bodies are in the form of an oval. And each kosha has a particular vibratory frequency, and each of our vibratory frequency forms our envelope, and that is our strength. And in fact, a simple experience that many of us go through in our life is that, for example, you're traveling and say you're in an aircraft or in a train, and there's a new fellow passenger who has a seat allotted next to you, and you sit next to your fellow passenger and you're flying for the next 1.5 or 2 hours, don't know this person at all, and this person has done nothing to you, but sometimes we feel very uncomfortable sitting over there. Or sometimes more positively, we just don't know, we end up getting introduced to the person, and by the time you get down, you already have exchanged your contacts and addresses and made friendship with Facebook and WhatsApp, and get to become long-term friends. How does this happen? The key for all this is our koshas. No, the Anandamaya Kosha of every individual vibrates to a frequency of about 50 to 55 centimeters. And the frequency of your fellow passenger and your Anandamaya Kosha, when they are in harmony, you tend to make friends. You get into a good contact, good friendship with such people. And if your kosha's frequency and the fellow passengers' frequency are not in harmony for whatever reason, suddenly you start disliking, you're very uncomfortable, sorry, sitting next to the passenger for that next half an hour, 1 hour, 1.5 hours. It's a terrible experience you've had. Many times it happens to us, we don't realize why it happens. No, and we are so relieved once we have landed and just jump out of the aircraft, get into the bus and come out. No, but then it's interesting how our ancestors have gone into the details of understanding the human body, and the architect's job becomes more complex because even a space has such koshas and proportions, and it is the job of an architect through the subject of Vastu Vidya, where we kind of bring in a harmony through the architectural design process by creating a design solution for a given space to the people who are going to live in that space. That becomes a core of architecture. With these few comments, I think I should wind up. I can give another long talk for another 2 hours with my limited knowledge, of course. That is the depth of our knowledge. It has been very kind of these two institutions to have facilitated young artists and research scholars a platform to share their work and knowledge so that such knowledge systems build and grow to bring in the strength of our traditional knowledge systems. To conclude, I would like to quote a statement from the Ishopanishad, which says, Yasmin sarvani bhutani atmeva bhuta vijanatah tatra ko mohaka shoka ekatvamanupashyatah, which goes to say, but he who sees everywhere the self in all existences and all existence in the self shrinks not thereafter from aught. What beautiful thoughts. And today we are talking about sustainable architecture, sustainable living. Bharat has not only thought of this, has given us a living style where we live sustainable life through a process of runa, thanksgiving between nature and people. When we respect our immediate surroundings, we will start living sustainably. Thank you, Dr. Jayashree Rajagopal, Dr. Rajashri Vasudevan, and the whole team for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, Ms. Lekha. Congratulations. Wishing you greater success in your research and your architectural practice. Thank you, all of you. Thank you to all the guests. Om Shanti.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jagannathan. I think it was a different dimension that Lekha presented, and you added so many other dimensions to that as well. So this has kind of, I think, brought forth a few questions which have been asked on Facebook Live. So I will just be reading them out. There is the first question to Ms. Lekha. You have taken the example of Alaripo for your presentation. Would that mean that different templates would be needed for different deities to which the items in Bharatanatyam are dedicated?
Answering to that question, the aspect of pattern generation is completely based on the Nritta aspect of Bharatanatyam. So that deals with all the movements which are there. So there would be nothing which is specific to any deity right there, because that will be based on your movements, your adavis, jatis or korves or whatever it may be. So jati, swaram, varnam, tirmanams, all of that can be converted into a pattern using the same rule system. There will be no change required. Whereas, yes, if you do want to bring in a different rule, that could change based on what talam your particular nritta is based on. Your sizes can be different. The kind of shapes you replace them can be different. But the process, the design process, there would be no need to change that, because this is relatable to the nritta aspect of dance.
Okay, now there are, I think, two questions which are more or less connected. So I'll read both of them. One is, does your study reiterate the fundamental relation between science and spirituality? There's another one. Can architecture for Indian dance be termed religious? How do we accommodate the secular performance aspects?
I don't know if I'm old enough to answer that question, but I will definitely answer how much I know about it. Uh, Terming something based on religion, I'm not very sure if I can say that. But dance and architecture as an art form, it's not something that is created through this study. It's something which was already existing, which I was just able to interpret and bring it together. So I don't see it as in terms of religion or anything of that sort, but definitely they are two architecture and Bharatanatyam are two art forms which are completely very deep rooted, and they have a big like a huge history behind it. So that's how I look at it. I don't bring it into religion as an aspect. Definitely, yes, sir, I think you are the right person to answer this question.
Yes, please, Dr. Jagannathan. I would like you to add your points here.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, thank you. I would like to, reiterate what Paduka once told. She was invited by the then secular Indian government. They were debating on religion and secularism and things like that in the Ministry of Human Resources Development. And I remember, what Paduka was saying. While culture may be the body, or the culture is the soul of any nation, its body is heritage, and religion is like the ornaments on that beautiful body. Now if you remove religion, that body becomes incomplete. No, because only it's a dead body which is devoid of ornaments. So we are into a fed into a very wrong uh, thought that secularism is devoid of religion. In our country, even atheism was a religion, and it was certainly accepted. We have various kinds of situations, historic epochs in our country which speaks of ninda stuti and stuff like that, where there have been individuals who've been criticizing, condemning God, and still they have been accepted. And to this day we speak of Hiranyakashipu and Ravana, their greatness and their weaknesses. That is the strength of our country and our religion. As long as there is no hypocrisy in the religion, as long as your religion is able to honestly accept its strengths and weaknesses, let us not be hesitant or worried about accepting religion. The problem starts when the religion starts becoming hypocritic. That's when the problem starts and arrogance sets in. Then I say, if you don't accept what I say, you will be thrown out and your hands and legs will be cut off. That's where the problem is. Otherwise, any religion is very beautiful, excellent, and very necessary. And certainly religion is very much part of any art. That's my submission.
Thank you for that clarification. Much needed. especially because there are so many misconceptions regarding the term secular. As you said, it is not a concept devoid of religion. For us, as Paduka says, everything is sacred, including the secular. So, I mean, people don't understand it, and that's why there is a lot of confusion, particularly when we use the word sacred. I think the opposite is profane and not secular. Many people make the mistake of confusing the two. There is one more question which has come up, Lekha, and that is, how do you reconcile the agamic basis of traditional Indian architecture with the modern avatara of Bharatanatyam? I think probably what they're meaning is that Bharatanatyam as an art form is much more recent compared to the ancient basis of architecture. So how do you reconcile the two? I mean, something on which your study or project is based. Would you be able to explain that?
Based on my understanding of the question, I have looked at Bharatanatyam as a dance form in the current scenario, what I have learned and what I have gone through. So I have not gone into the historical changes that have happened in Bharatanatyam. So my research has been based on the current trends of Bharatanatyam and how I have abstracted it from this to bring it into the contemporary aspect of architecture.
There is, I think, I wouldn't say a related question, but something connected with Bharatanatyam again. Can you give some information about the influence of architecture on Bharatanatyam? That is, you've mentioned about it in the beginning, I think, of your talk.
Yes, definitely. Like I said, Bharatanatyam and architecture reflect a lot of things in common within the two. Even while performing as an architect, there are a lot of things that I see as architecture in Bharatanatyam. Something very relatable is when we are choreographing a group production or a group performance, the placement of every dancer has a particular reason. There's a particular geometry, there's a particular flow of space that is there in Bharatanatyam. The way one moves from one position to another, the use of costume, the use of lighting, all of that are aspects of, I see it as aspects of architecture, which is reflected in Bharatanatyam. Just to name a few.
Okay. There is a technical question regarding Greek theatre. So would you be able to answer it, or should I ask it to Dr. Jagannathan? The question is as follows. The Greeks talk about the horseshoe formation of the theatron or the theatre. Do we use this in our theatre architecture as well?
I think, sir, you could take this question, please.
No, simple. No, see, any theater design essentially requires the two aspects. One is the visual lines, and two, the acoustic quality of the space. Now, the Greek architecture has, got beautiful examples where even to this day, where, for example, the Parthenon has been reconstructed, of course, and the acoustic quality has been technically restored by, say, Philips, to the ancient times, where there was no technology like that of Philips today, where by architectural design, one of the concepts of parametric design, maybe they used a lot of calculations where they used to create the quality of space which we do in the current technology. Like, for example, you stand on the stage and click a matchstick. Now, without any audio system, you can hear the click of that matchstick at the last row. The Convention Center for Nimans in Bangalore is one such example. The Bombay, Mumbai, NCPA and others, beautiful examples for such fantastic acoustics quality, technologically done. The Greeks had achieved it in the Pantheon or in some of their stages. Now, the horseshoe pattern is one of the forms which has a reason. based on their art form too. Say, for example, our art form, which is now seen in, say, some of the Kerala temples, the Mohiniyattam and Kathakali is performed. These art forms are very, very small group personalized art forms. No, the artist performs on a stage for a group which is very closely placed around the artist in the presence of a oil lamp. And because this art form emphasizes largely on the facial expressions, the movement of the eyes, the movement of the the cheekbones, the movement of the lips. No, these are all given a lot of importance, say for example in Kathakali, and these are highlighted by their makeup. So this art form did not require that horseshoe kind of design where huge gatherings were required in the Greek concept. We also have that, which I said in the beginning of my presentation, where I said, say Paduka did that Pushpanjali starting from the entrance of the Brihadishwara temple's Garbhagraha to the point where behind the Nandikeshwara there's a small stage. She walked up to that, or moved up to that point. So now, if you're doing something like that, it is up to the artist to adopt the space. And then the architect responds to the art. So the Greek art probably challenged and required that kind of a spatial requirement. Indian art at that time did not want. Today, our artists are capable of using such kind of a spaces. You give Paduka the entire Parthenon, she will still find it small. No, she can still complete and cover the whole space sitting on a small stool right in front of the whole auditorium and the stage. So like it depends on the artist's competence and skills. So like it is all subjective to the specific use. So there is no hard and fast rule that the horseshoe pattern is only limited to a particular country or style. It, I would think, relates to more to the art form and the the development of that particular country's style. You have the beautiful stages, the nritya mantapas in the Orient temple. They are huge, they are spacious, right? No, artists do perform there. So we do have our own requirements and comparative situations. So there is no such rigidity in all this.
Just one question I wanted to ask. The Nagarjuna Konda theatre that is now gone underwater, but was that also in this horseshoe shape, or was it more or less oblong? Is there any study on that?
Sorry, not that I know of, but yes, I've had no discussions when Paduka has been mentioning of her experiences of her gurus who've seen that
Yes.
uh, space, and where she I don't think it was a horseshoe, but then apparently it was probably like an amphitheater.
Yes.
No, not very clear. Maybe today with technology we have marine archaeology and stuff like that, we could still study our under the water, the reservoir, how the foam was, and I'm sure we'll be able to reconstruct
Yeah.
and do a study. Yes.
Actually, when we did go to Athens to perform in a circular, in a horseshoe-shaped theater, it suited very well for the dance drama, but we had to adapt our movements. That is with Paduka when we went to perform Meenakshi Kalyanam as well as Valli Kalyanam, two subjects that they were not familiar, but they enjoyed it a lot because the floor patterns we could adapt for an open space like that. So probably, as you say, Greek theater needed that kind of open space and a circular movement, circular space for the audience. The gallery system is mentioned in our Natya Shastra theater also.
Yes.
It gives even the measurement of the seats to be given.
True. Yes. In fact, when I was presenting the chapter on the Natya Shastra about theatre design.
Yeah.
As per Paduka's instructions in the national conference, in Sangeet Natak Academy's conference, there was a study which I had done, which very clearly, as you rightly mentioned, even gives the dimensions and the materials that are to be used for designing and constructing of a theatre for performing arts, Natya, dance, drama, and music. Yes, very much given.
There is just one or two questions only before you wind up. There is one for you, Lekha, where is there some specific space for the preliminaries as we have in Purvaranga? That in your pattern, in your template that you have put forward, is there any specific space that you have kept aside for the Purvaranga or the preliminaries before the play? Are you familiar with that aspect? Chapter 2 and chapter 4, I mean, chapter 5 of the Natya Shastra.
The Purva, as in the Natya Mandapas, right, ma'am? You mean the playhouses for the chapter?
Actually, only this much is there in the question.
Mhm.
That is there any space that you have set aside for the Purvaranga in the template that you have envisaged? That's all. The question is only that much.
Yeah. So my research was majorly based on bringing in Bharatanatyam into architecture. So this is more on the process. This process I had applied for the Performing Arts Center. So the spaces within the Performing Arts Center catered to the modern Performing Arts Center where we have museums, art galleries, and all of that. So there is, as a connection to Natya Shastra based on the spaces in the Performing Arts Center is not much relevant with this project. But yes, if you're going to be using the same process on a different building, on different spaces, it would.
Dr. Jagannathan, if you could throw a little light on the architecture of Bharatanatyam Foundation for Asian Culture for those who are not very familiar with it. So somebody has just requested just a few points as to what is special about the design of the place.
Yes, first of all, it was Paduka's vision, which became the brief, the basis for the design of the entire complex. Though of course it is popularly understood that Paduka wished to uh, you know establish or set up a temple for Bharata Muni, after her long years and experience, and her experience particularly in Indonesia and other such countries where Bharata was worshipped as Kuru Muni. And then Bharata Paduka wanted to was visualizing that in India we don't seem to be having a space for such a thing. But then it was a little bit of misunderstanding, because having known Paduka, and then finally, in fact, what she actually wanted was her broad, wide vision. She wanted it to be a center for international performing arts research studies. It had to be a melting pot for the various performing arts from across civilizations on the earth, especially on the Asian performing arts. That's why even the trust is called Bharatanatyam Center for Asian Performing Arts. But that doesn't mean it stops with Asian performing arts. And Paduka's vision of Asia is much broader and bigger than what we think today. And it also includes large parts of Russia and the erstwhile Soviet Union's different countries today, different parts of China, different and Japan, various countries across, and their arts. So that was the basis of Paduka's vision, and it had to have a small memorial structure where we could remember and offer our respects to the great Bharata Muni, who codified the Natya Shastra, which forms the basis of performing arts for civilizations across the world. Now, that being the basis, it was a huge challenge Paduka had thrown upon, and this was converted into a core structure, the basis of which was derived from the various elements of the Natya Shastra, and like how our Lekha Prasad has also done, I also try to work on the various elements of theory of architecture and create the structure based on the site elements. Now, I will just speak only on the design process very quickly. No, the whole idea was to integrate the concept of architectural design as mentioned in our traditional knowledge systems, where any space needs to be a crucible to receiving cosmic energies and distributing this cosmic energies to the people who visit into that space. Now, towards this, there is a process which the Shastras defined called as the Vastu Purusha Mandala. Now, this Vastu Purusha Mandala, based on the proportions of the idol of Bharata, the proportions of this Bharata's idol were based on the proportions of certain scales of Paduka, who was the person who visualized the whole concept. So therefore, we have actually translated the visualizers or the basic sthapatyas proportions into an immortal form of the Bharata form. And that Bharata's form has been used as a basic scale to develop the design and proportions of the entire complex. So the core structure contains of a museum structure, which is on two levels, basically responding to the site conditions also, which will house the various artifacts and art and performing art related elements of the various Asian performing arts, and will culminate into the core of Bharata's shrine. And this structure will have entrances from the four cardinal directions. And eventually, when the design is completely executed, each of the cardinal direction will be entered with a gopuram. Each gopuram on the eastern side, for example, reflecting the Far East, the Japanese architecture. The southern side will reflect the Turkmenistan's architectural style, and the northern style will reflect the Russian architectural style, and the southern will reflect the Indian architectural style. So this is to reflect the characteristic of the different cultural strengths of our continent, and from there will culminate into this. This also, the campus also has a center for students who will be there, scholars and students from the different parts of the continent, which is yet to be started off, and where they will host these experts. They will be staying there, conducting their research interactions, added with an amphitheater. There will also be a library and seminar hall facility, and of course, and eventually administrative and accommodation facilities and stuff like that. All of them beautifully placed within a beautiful landscape architecture. And the landscape, the way I thought I should visualize, was based on our traditional cultural literature, based on Shilapadigaram and all these concepts, where they speak of the various landscape elements. Again, it's a very important issue that instead of bringing a tree from China, which is, I think, more unsustainable, we should bring plants and trees which are very relevant to our own culture and geography. That is what we really mean sustainable. So that is how it's been conceptualized. And of course, we would be looking for sponsors and artists who will contribute into our endeavor, Paduka's dream, to make it into a reality. to bring in the space, the various other spaces which are to be done. That is, to put very quickly, of course, the whole space has been, as I said, the Vastu Purusha Mandala. There is a process and method that has been specified and suggested in the Shastras, where the 9 or the 8 Ashta Chakras of the Vastu Purusha, which is a form which is now converted into a living organism by energizing the chakras of the Vastu Purusha, and through the Brahmasthana, the 9th point, linking these organic form with the cosmic. This is an energy form. This is not a physical form. It is established at the energy level below the foundation of the space. And this is linked after energizing with the cosmic and create a cosmic radiation within the whole space. So that has been the concept, with the blessings of my Guru Paduka, and with the blessings, as she says, I don't know, of her Guru Paramacharya. For me, my only Paramacharya and Guru is Paduka, so I don't go beyond that. And but then, as my Guru says, because like in the Vaishnava Sampradaya, no, Kurat Arvan was a great disciple of Sri Ramanujacharya. And in Sampradaya, the Prabandha Sampradaya, we have Nammalvar, who is one of the greatest Arvars, and Madhura Kavi, who was his immediate contemporary, who was his. Madhura Kavi Arvar says, I worship Perumal, not because I have great respect for Perumal. I don't care. I don't believe in Perumal. I believe only Nammalvar, and he's in front of me. My Devam is in front of me. I worship and believe only him. And being a terrorist, Vaishnava terrorist, I believe the same. And when my Guru, my God is in front of me in the form of Paduka, I don't want to see anybody beyond her. So I go by her, and by her blessings, this has been done. And the space is certainly great and beautiful. And once it's done completely, I'm sure it'll be wonderful, just because it's the vision of such a great visionary. That's about the design of the
It would have been really difficult to put it in a nutshell, because it involves such a great vision over quite some time, quite a few years. But I think a remarkable summary has been done by you. So we come to the end of this session, and I would like to know if Lekha would like to add anything, or can we go to the formal vote of thanks? You can add anything that you wish to as an addition to your presentation, or what Dr. Jagannathan has said.
I just wanted to ask Lekha one thing. She came to the performance space. Did you represent a stage space there?
Yes, ma'am. It was the performance space. The Anandamaya Kosha in my project has like 2 mini auditoriums and one large auditorium which has like 1,000 capacity. So all of these auditoriums are very like our conventional auditoriums that we see today. So there were performance spaces. Yes. At this outset, I think I must say that I came here to present my little research, that I wouldn't call it even a research, a small study that I had done, but I am going back taking a lot more from Mr. Jagannathan, as well as all of the questions, as well as this whole experience has been wonderful. My pranams to my Guru. I think it was because of Priya ma'am that I even got this opportunity. It was by chance that ma'am had said in a workshop, and Jayashree ma'am had been so kind to invite me today to present my study here. Thank you to Mr. Jagannathan, sir. It was very nice to listen to your insightful concepts on the BIFAC as well. And also thank you for your inputs on my project. And I really, really look forward to, meeting you. I think once after all this COVID is over, I think I would love to come and meet you at your college. And it would be great if I could work with you for any project in the future. So thank you so much to the young, to the research, to the forum, as well as the expert and all my gurus and my parents. Thank you so much.
So we come now to the formal vote of thanks. We will of course fail in our duty if we do not begin and end every session with our pranams to our Guru. As we say often, it's not just that she's a teacher, but she puts us on to a certain path which is full of hard work, but very energizing, and which also talks about contributing something very worthwhile to society. That is her message always. Her life has been her message, and in our own small ways, we try our best to take it forward. So, pranams to Paduka. Of course, our expert today, Dr. Jagannathan, who gave us so much of information, not just inputs on Lekha's presentation, but a very wide range from different aspects, as also this quick summary on the architectural aspects of BIFAC, which many people have been wanting to know, but we didn't have the apt forum till today, that session till today, where we could explore different aspects of architecture. So thank you, Dr. Jagannathan, for being with us. And as you said, in fact, as you committed earlier, we would look forward to a longer 2-hour session on different aspects of architecture connected with performing arts sometime later. And I'm sure everybody would benefit from that. So namaskarams to you for that. Coming to Lekha Prasad, thank you so much. As you said, it is indeed our teachers, our gurus, Priya in your case, who lead us to explore different aspects and who gave you this opportunity. And knowing Priya personally, I'm sure she is giving her blessings as she's watching you do your presentation. And as you called your Mahaguru, Professor Sudharani Raghupati, I'm sure she's also very proud to know that her lineage is being carried forward. So congratulations, Lekha, and all the best for your future, your research and your PhD. For Center of Excellence Art and Culture, I take the opportunity to thank our secretary, Abhay Shishimal Jain ji, who is always supporting us in all our ventures, and Dr. Padmavati, who was very particular to attend today's session because she's very interested in architecture and dance. So thank you very much to both of them. And on behalf of Natyaalayam Academy of Performing Arts, Mumbai, I would like to thank Mr. Ramesh and Mahindra Finance for supporting them throughout in all the sessions. And we would really like to thank our, I would say, rather faithful audience, which turns up session after session, looking for some new inputs and new insights. And we hope you will continue to be with us on our rather long journey. And I'm sure Dr. Jayashree would agree that every session has been such an enriching learning experience for us. And at this point, I want to thank Mrs. Aishwarya Harish for being the MC, and Ms. Sundari for the melodious rendition, and Ms. Srividya from our department for the technical support. So our next session, which will be on the 23rd of April, will be on another very interesting and unusual theme, and that is Indian miniature paintings from Gujarat, with reference to the Gita Govinda. We have Ms. Hitangi Brahmabhat from Gujarat as a young researcher, and we have Dr. Ashrafi Bhagat from Chennai as the expert. So we look forward to meeting all of you on that session as well. So thank you so much, everyone, and Shubharatri.